I stood in Jasper's study, my hands trembling as I clutched the letter. The words blurred before my eyes, but their meaning was crystal clear. My sister Mara's flowery handwriting mocked me from the page, each loop and curve a dagger to my heart. "Jas, my love," it began. "Our little miracle is growing stronger every day. I can't wait to start our life together, free from the chains of the past." The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to reality. Jasper's footsteps echoed through the house, and I steeled myself for the confrontation I never thought I'd face. "Lori, you home?" he called out, his voice carrying that easy charm that had once made me weak in the knees. I stepped out of the study, letter in hand. "In here, Jas?" He appeared in the doorway, his smile faltering as he took in my expression. "What's wrong, honey? Why don't you tell me?" I held up the letter, my voice steadier than I felt. "Or better yet, why don't you explain how my sister is carrying your child?" Jasper's face hardened, all pretense of concern evaporating. "Where did you find that? Does it matter? How long, Jas? How long have you been lying to me?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's been going on for a while now, Lori. I didn't want to hurt you, but didn't want to hurt me." I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign to my ears. "That's rich, coming from the man who's been sleeping with my sister behind my back." "You know why," Jasper said, his tone maddeningly calm. "Mara gives me what you can't. A future. A family." The words hit me like a physical blow. "So that's it? My infertility means I'm not worthy of your love?" "It's not just about that," he argued, but I could see the truth in his eyes. "Mara and we connect on a level you and I never did." I felt my world crumbling around me. "Get out," I whispered. "Lori, be reasonable. We need to talk about this like adults." "Get out," I screamed, hurling the letter at him. "I don't want to see your face ever again." Jasper held up his hands in surrender. "Fine, I'll go stay with Mara tonight. We can discuss this when you've calmed down." As he turned to leave, a thought struck me. "Wait, does Mom know about this?" He paused in the doorway. "Ellie? Yeah, she knows. She's been supportive, actually." The final betrayal. I sank to the floor as Jasper's footsteps faded away, leaving me alone with my shattered illusions. Hours passed in a blur of tears and disbelief. When my phone rang, I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Lori, it's Diane from the spa. I was wondering if you'd like to come in for a treatment tomorrow. You sounded stressed during your last visit, and I thought you could use some pampering." I hesitated, then made a decision. "Actually, Diane, that sounds perfect. I could use a friend right now." "Of course, dear. Is everything all right?" "No," I admitted. "But maybe it will be, eventually. I'll see you tomorrow." As I hung up, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked lost, broken. But beneath the pain, I saw a flicker of something else. Determination. Jasper and Mara thought they had won. My own mother had chosen their side, but they had no idea what they'd awakened in me. Tomorrow, I'd start picking up the pieces, and then I'd show them all exactly what Lorraine Harper was capable of. I climbed into bed, my mind racing with possibilities. For the first time in years, I felt truly awake. The game had changed, and I was ready to play. The spa's tranquil atmosphere felt like a slap in the face. How dare the world be so calm when my life was in shambles? I sank into a plush chair in the waiting area, my body tense despite the soothing music. "Lori?" Diane's warm voice broke through my thoughts. "I'm so glad you came. You look like you could use some TLC." I managed a weak smile. "You have no idea." As Diane led me to a private room, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the mirror. Mara, my sister, the betrayer. She was lounging in a robe, her hand resting on her slightly swollen belly. Our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of, was it guilt? No, it was triumph. "Lori." Mara's voice dripped with false sweetness. "What a surprise to see you here. How are you holding up?" I clenched my fists, willing myself to stay calm. "Just fine, Mara. How's the baby?" Her smile widened. "Growing stronger every day. Jas is over the moon." The casual mention of my husband's name sent a jolt of pain through me. "I'm sure he is." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Really, Lori, you should have seen this coming. Jas needs more than you can give." I felt something snap inside me. "And you think you're what he needs? A backstabbing sister who'd betray her own family?" "Family?" Mara scoffed. "Please. We both know you've always been the odd one out. Even Mom sees it." Before I could respond, Diane stepped between us. Ladies, this is a place of relaxation. Perhaps we should all take a deep breath? Mara rolled her eyes. Whatever. Enjoy your pity party, Lori. I've got a nursery to plan. As she sauntered away, I felt my legs give out. Diane caught me, guiding me to a nearby chair. Oh, honey, she soothed. I'm so sorry. Do you want to talk about it? The whole story came pouring out. Jasper's betrayal, Mara's pregnancy, my mother's apparent approval of it all. Diane listened without judgment, her kind eyes filled with understanding. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. Lori, listen to me. Sometimes we need to lose everything to find out who we truly are. I blinked back tears. But who am I without them? They've been my whole world for so long. Diane smiled. That's the exciting part. You get to decide. And from what I've seen, you're stronger than you know. As we talked, I felt a tiny spark of hope ignite in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild from this wreckage. Our conversation was interrupted by raised voices from the reception area. Curious, we peeked out to see Mara engaged in a heated argument with a man I didn't recognize. You promised me that money, Aaron, Mara hissed. I need it for the baby. The man, Aaron, looked exasperated. And I told you I can't just embezzle funds whenever you want. It doesn't work that way. Embezzle? My ears perked up. What exactly was my perfect sister involved in? Figure it out, Mara snapped. Or I'll tell everyone about your little side business. Aaron's face paled. You wouldn't dare. Try me, Mara smirked before storming off. I turned to Diane, my mind racing. Did you hear that? She nodded, her expression grave. Sounds like your sister and her friend are mixed up in something illegal. A plan began to form in my mind. If Mara and Jasper thought they could walk all over me, they had another thing coming. It was time to fight fire with fire. Diane, I said, a newfound determination in my voice. I think I need to do some digging. Can you help me? She squeezed my hand. Honey, I thought you'd never ask. Let's show them what happens when they mess with the wrong woman. As we left the spa, I felt a surge of energy. The game had changed, and for once, I held the winning hand. Mara and Jasper wouldn't know what hit them. I stepped into the spa's courtyard, my mind reeling from the encounter with Mara. The lush greenery and trickling water fountain seemed to mock my inner turmoil. As I sank onto a nearby bench, a gentle voice startled me. Excuse me, are you all right? I looked up to see a man in his mid-40s, concern etched on his kind face. I'm fine, I lied, wiping away a stray tear. He sat down beside me, maintaining a respectful distance. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation inside. I'm Aaron, by the way. Aaron Cutler. Lori Harper, I replied, surprised by my willingness to engage. Aaron's eyes widened with recognition. Harper? As in Jasper Harper's wife? My heart clenched. Soon-to-be ex-wife, it seems. He nodded sympathetically. I'm so sorry. Anyone who treats you like they did doesn't deserve you. It's hard to see that now, but I appreciate your kindness, I admitted. Aaron hesitated, then leaned in closer. Listen, Lori, there's something you should know about Jasper and your sister. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? I'm a financial consultant, he explained. I've had dealings with Jasper in the past. He's not who he claims to be. I felt a mix of dread and curiosity. Go on. Aaron took a deep breath. Jasper isn't a surgeon. He's been running a complex investment scam for years, and I suspect Mara's involved too. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. That's impossible. I've seen him in scrubs, heard him talk about surgeries. All part of the act, Aaron said gently. He's fooled a lot of people, Lori, but I have proof. My mind raced, piecing together inconsistencies I'd ignored for years. The late-night phone calls, the unexplained cash, the vague answers about his work. It all suddenly made horrifying sense. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Aaron's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. Because I was part of it once. I helped him set up some of the fake accounts. But I got out when I realized how deep it went. I've been trying to make amends ever since. I stood up abruptly, anger and betrayal coursing through me. So you're just as bad as they are. I was, Aaron admitted, standing as well. But I'm trying to make it right. I want to help you, Lori. You deserve to know the truth. I paced the courtyard, my emotions in turmoil. How can I trust you? How do I know this isn't another lie? Aaron reached into his pocket and pulled out a USB drive. Everything's on here. Bank statements, fake identities, the whole scheme. Take it. Verify it yourself. With shaking hands, I accepted the drive. If this is true, my whole life has been a lie. Not your whole life, Aaron said softly. Just the parts involving Jasper and Mara. You're stronger than their deception, Lori. I can see that. As I clutched the USB drive, a strange calm settled over me. Thank you, Aaron. I don't know if I can trust you yet, but thank you for this. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take your time, and if you need anything, advice, support, or just someone to talk to, I'm here. As Aaron turned to leave, a thought struck me. Wait, you said Mara's involved too. How? He hesitated, then said, she's been helping Jasper recruit new investors, using her charm, her connections, the pregnancy. It might be part of their long game. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. My sister, my husband, their betrayal. It was all part of an elaborate con, and I had been the biggest fool of all. I gripped the USB drive tighter, a new resolve hardening within me. Aaron, I called out, I think I'm going to need your help after all. As he turned back, a small smile on his face, I felt the first stirrings of a plan. Jasper and Mara thought they had won, but they had no idea what was coming. The game had changed, and this time I intended to be the one calling the shots. The annual Springfield Harvest Festival buzzed with activity, but I felt like a ghost drifting through the crowd. The cheerful decorations and laughter seemed to mock my pain. I clutched my purse tightly, the USB drive from Aaron burning a hole in its depths. I spotted them before they saw me, Jasper, Mara, and my mother Ellie, huddled together near the apple bobbing station. They looked like the perfect family unit, and bile rose in my throat. Taking a deep breath, I approached. Well, isn't this cozy? Their heads snapped up in unison. Jasper's easy smile faltered, while Mara's hand instinctively went to her slightly swollen belly. Lori, dear, my mother said, her voice overly bright. We didn't expect to see you here. Clearly, I replied, my tone icy. I wouldn't want to interrupt this little family gathering. Jasper stepped forward, his charm offensive in full swing. Now, Lori, there's no need for dramatics. We're all adults here. I laughed, the sound harsh and unfamiliar. Adults? Is that what you call lying, cheating, and stealing? Mara's eyes widened. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, pulling up the incriminating documents Aaron had provided. I know everything. The investment scam, the fake surgeon act, all of it. The color drained from Jasper's face. Mara looked like she might faint. My mother stepped between us, her voice low and urgent. Lori, you need to stand up for yourself. Don't let them walk all over you. But not here. Not like this. I stared at her, incredulous. Now you want me to stand up for myself? After years of favoring Mara, of criticizing every decision I've made? I never meant to. Ellie began, but I cut her off. Save it. You never believed in my strength. Maybe it's time I show it to you. I turned to the growing crowd of onlookers. Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement to make. Jasper grabbed my arm. Lori, don't do this. Think about what you're doing. I wrenched free from his grip. Oh, I've thought about it for days, and now everyone's going to know exactly who you are. As I opened my mouth to expose their lies, a commotion erupted nearby. 2 police officers pushed through the crowd, heading straight for us. Jasper Harper, one of them called out. We need you to come with us. Jasper's face contorted with rage. He glared at me. What have you done? I shook my head, genuinely confused. This isn't me. As the officers handcuffed Jasper, explaining his rights, I caught sight of Aaron in the distance. He gave me a subtle nod before disappearing into the crowd. Mara collapsed into my mother's arms, sobbing dramatically. What's going to happen to the baby? To me? I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. You made your choices, Mara. Now you have to live with them. As the officers led Jasper away, the festival dissolved into chaos. People whispered and pointed, their shocked faces a blur around me. My mother approached, her expression a mix of regret and admiration. Lori, I'm sorry for everything. I met her gaze, years of hurt and resentment bubbling to the surface. It's a start, Mom, but we have a long way to go. As the adrenaline wore off, I found myself at a crossroads. I had the power to destroy Mara's reputation, to expose every sordid detail of their scheme. But was that really what I wanted? I watched as Mara was escorted away by concerned friends, her perfectly crafted world crumbling around her. In that moment, I made a decision. Revenge wasn't the answer. I needed to focus on rebuilding my own life, not tearing down theirs. With a deep breath, I turned away from the scene of my family's public implosion. It was time to write my own story, one that didn't revolve around their betrayal. As I walked away from the festival, I felt lighter than I had in years. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was mine to shape. I stood in the middle of my living room, barely recognizing the space around me. Gone were the family photos, the knickknacks Jasper and I had collected over the years. In their place stood sleek, modern furniture and abstract art pieces that spoke of independence and new beginnings. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Aaron stood on the porch, a file tucked under his arm and concern etched on his face. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "I was just admiring my handiwork." Aaron whistled as he entered. "Quite the transformation. It suits you, Lori." We settled on the new couch, the leather cool against my skin. Aaron spread the contents of his file on the coffee table, bank statements, emails, and photographs that painted a damning picture of Jasper and Mara's deception. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Aaron asked, his voice gentle. "Once we start, there's no going back." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. They made us think they were invincible. It's time to show them they're not. Aaron nodded, a glimmer of admiration in his eyes. "For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. Not many people would have the strength to fight back like this." As we pored over the documents, formulating our plan, a realization hit me. "Wait a minute," I said, pointing to a series of transactions. "These dates? They line up with when Jasper claimed to be at medical conferences." Aaron leaned in, his brow furrowed. "You're right. It looks like he was actually meeting with investors in the Cayman Islands." The betrayal cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had started to heal. All those times I was home alone, thinking he was saving lives, he was just lining his pockets. Aaron's hand found mine, a comforting warmth. "I'm so sorry, Lori. You didn't deserve any of this." For a moment, I let myself lean into his support. Then, straightening up, I said, "For the first time, I'm ready to fight back. Where do we start?" We spent hours crafting our strategy, deciding which pieces of information to leak and to whom. By the time Aaron left, night had fallen, and a sense of nervous anticipation filled the air. The next morning, I put our plan into action. A casual conversation with my gossipy neighbor about Jasper's frequent business trips. A pointed question to a mutual friend about Mara's sudden influx of cash. Small seeds of doubt planted carefully in fertile social soil. Days passed, and whispers began to circulate. I watched from the sidelines as Jasper and Mara's carefully constructed facade began to crack. Their invitations to social events became less frequent. People started to ask questions they couldn't easily answer. But as satisfaction bloomed in my chest, so did an unexpected pang of guilt. Was I any better than them, manipulating the truth for my own ends? My phone buzzed with a text from Mara. "We need to talk. Meet me at Mom's house tomorrow, please." I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to continue with our plan unabated. But another part, a part I thought had died with Jasper's betrayal, urged me to hear her out. As I debated my response, another text came through, this time from Aaron. "Big breakthrough. Found evidence of major fraud. This could put them away for good." My heart raced. This was it, the final nail in their coffin. With this information, I could destroy them completely. Isn't that what I wanted? But as I looked around my newly redecorated home, symbols of my independence surrounding me, I realized something. The woman who had started this revenge plot wasn't the same woman standing here now. I had changed, grown stronger. Did I really need to tear them down to build myself up? With trembling fingers, I typed out 2 responses. "To Mara, I'll be there. To Aaron, we need to talk. Can you come over?" As I hit send on both messages, I knew I was at a crossroads. The next 24 hours would determine not just Jasper and Mara's fate, but my own. It was time to decide what kind of person I wanted to be in this new chapter of my life. Setting my phone down, I walked to the window, watching the sun set on another day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face them head-on. The church basement hummed with tension as I stepped inside. Every eye in the room turned to me, a mix of curiosity and concern on their faces. This wasn't just another community meeting. It was the moment of truth. Jasper and Mara sat near the front, their heads close together, in whispered conversation. My mother, Ellie, sat a few rows behind them, her face a mask of worry. Aaron caught my eye from the back of the room and gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. Pastor Williams cleared his throat. Now that we're all here, let's begin. We've gathered to discuss the recent allegations that have been circulating in our community. My heart pounded as I stood, my legs shaky but my resolve firm. If I may, Pastor, I'd like to address those allegations directly. Jasper's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. Lori, don't do this. Not here. I ignored him, stepping to the front of the room. For years I've been silent. I've watched as lies were told, as people were deceived, but I can't stay quiet any longer. The room fell silent, all attention focused on me. I took a deep breath and plunged in. Jasper isn't the man you all think he is. Here's the truth. He's not a surgeon. He's never saved a single life. Instead, he's been running an elaborate investment scam, stealing money from this very community. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jasper leapt to his feet, his face contorted with rage. How dare you expose our private life? You're worse than useless. This isn't about our private life, I shot back. This is about the lies you've told everyone in this room, the money you've stolen from our friends and neighbors. I pulled out the documents Aaron had given me, holding them up for all to see. I have proof. Bank statements, fake credentials, everything. Jasper Harper is a fraud, and he's been using all of you to line his own pockets. The room erupted into chaos. People shouted questions, demanding explanations. Mara burst into tears, her hands protectively cradling her pregnant belly. And what about you, Mara? I turned to my sister, my voice breaking. Did you know? Were you part of this from the beginning? Mara's silence was all the answer anyone needed. As the truth sank in, I watched the community I'd grown up in grapple with the betrayal. Some people wept openly, others demanded justice. Through it all, Jasper stood defiant, his charm replaced by cold fury. You'll regret this, Lori. He hissed as two men from the congregation restrained him. I'll make sure of it. But his threats fell flat. For the first time I saw Jasper for what he truly was, a small, desperate man whose house of cards had finally collapsed. As the meeting dissolved into heated discussions and calls to involve the authorities, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my mother. Lori, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I had no idea. All this time, I thought, I'm so sorry. I wanted to fall into her arms, to let years of hurt and resentment melt away, but the wound was still too fresh. It's a start, Mom, but we have a long way to go. As I turned to leave, exhausted and emotionally drained, I caught sight of Aaron making his way towards me. But before he could reach me, Mara intercepted him. You, she spat, her face twisted with anger. You're the one who gave her the information, aren't you? You'll pay for this, Aaron. I swear it. The venom in her voice made me freeze. There was something in her eyes, a desperation, a darkness I'd never seen before. In that moment, I realized this wasn't over, not by a long shot. As I stepped out into the cool night air, the weight of what I'd done hit me full force. I'd exposed the truth, yes, but at what cost? And what would Mara do next, now that she had nothing left to lose? The battle was won, but I had a sinking feeling that the war was far from over. The old family cabin loomed before me, a weathered sentinel guarding decades of memories. I hesitated at the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. Inside, I knew Mara and Mom waited. This meeting, a last-ditch effort to salvage what remained of our fractured family. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. The musty air hit me like a wave, carrying with it the ghosts of summers past. Mara sat rigidly on the threadbare couch, her pregnant belly a stark reminder of her betrayal. Mom paced by the fireplace, worry etched deep in the lines of her face. Lori, Mom said, relief evident in her voice, you came. I nodded curtly, unable to muster a smile. Let's get this over with. Mara's eyes flashed with anger. Get what over with? Your little revenge tour? Destroying everything we've built? Everything you've built? I laughed bitterly. You mean the lies, the manipulation, the theft? You're just jealous, Mara spat. You've always envied me. My looks, my success, and now Jasper. The words hit me like a physical blow, reopening old wounds. Envied you? Is that what you think this is about? Mom stepped between us, her voice pleading. Both of you need to stop. This isn't what family should be. Family? I echoed, years of pent-up hurt and resentment bubbling to the surface. When have we ever been a real family, Mom? When you constantly praised Mara while criticizing every move I made. When you turned a blind eye to her affair with my husband. Mom recoiled as if slapped. I never meant to make you feel that way, Lori. I was just trying to push you to be your best. By tearing me down at every turn? I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. Do you have any idea what that did to me? The insecurity, the self-doubt? Mara scoffed. Oh, please. You always played the victim. Poor, perfect Lori, so misunderstood. Something inside me snapped. You want to talk about being a victim? Let's talk about the summer I was 12, Mara, the summer camp incident. The color drained from Mara's face. Lori, don't. But I was beyond stopping. The floodgates had opened, and years of suppressed trauma came pouring out. You told everyone I was the one who started the fire in the mess hall. You watched as I was punished, ostracized. But it was you, wasn't it? You were smoking behind the building and dropped the cigarette. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mara, is this true? Mara's composure crumbled. I was scared. I didn't mean for it to happen. But you let me take the fall. I pressed on, my voice shaking. And that was just the beginning, wasn't it? Every time something went wrong, you found a way to blame me. And Mom, you always believed her. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom sank into a chair, her face ashen. Mara stared at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. I've spent my whole life trying to measure up, I continued, my voice barely above a whisper, trying to be good enough for both of you. But now I see, it was never about me. It was about your own insecurities, your own failings. Mara's head snapped up, her eyes blazing. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? Saint Lori, the long-suffering martyr. No, I said, a strange calm settling over me. I'm not better. I'm just done. Done trying to win your approval, done letting you manipulate me, done with this toxic cycle we call family. I turned to leave, but Mom's voice stopped me. Lori, please, we can fix this. We're family. I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. Maybe someday, Mom, but not today. Today, I choose me. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, I heard Mara's muffled sobs and Mom's attempts at comfort. Part of me wanted to turn back to try one last time to mend the broken bonds. But I knew, deep in my heart, that some fractures run too deep to heal. Walking away from the cabin, I felt simultaneously lighter and more burdened than ever before. The truth was out, the wounds laid bare. But what would rise from the ashes of this final confrontation? Only time would tell. I stood in the center of my new apartment, surrounded by friends and the symbols of my rebirth. The walls, once bare, now held artwork that spoke of strength and new beginnings. Every corner reflected the woman I'd become, resilient, independent, and finally truly myself. As I gazed around the room, my eyes met Aaron's. He smiled warmly, and I felt a flutter in my chest that had nothing to do with anxiety. It was hope, pure and simple. Diane raised her glass, her eyes twinkling. To new beginnings, she proclaimed, and to never letting anyone dim your light. The room echoed with cheers and the clinking of glasses. I took a sip of champagne, savoring the moment. Speech, someone called out, and suddenly all eyes were on me. I cleared my throat, surprised to find that I wasn't nervous. A few months ago, I thought my life was over. I'd lost my husband, my sister, and in many ways, my sense of self. I felt useless. The room fell silent, hanging on my every word. But standing here now, I realized that what I thought was an ending was really just a beginning. I found strength I never knew I had, and it's just the beginning. As I spoke, I caught sight of a familiar face slipping into the back of the room. Mom. Our eyes met, and I saw a mixture of pride and regret in her gaze. Taking a deep breath, I continued. I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stand by you, who believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. I gestured to the friends around me, Diane, who had been my rock, my coworkers who had supported me through the darkest days, and Aaron, whose unwavering faith in me had helped me find my own strength. To all of you, thank you. You've shown me what true family looks like. As the applause died down, I made my way through the crowd to where Mom stood. Lori, she said, her voice thick with emotion, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so sorry for everything. I hesitated for a moment, then pulled her into a hug. It's okay, Mom. We're both learning and growing. She pulled back, wiping away a tear. I have something for you, she said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter from my boss, offering me a promotion to regional manager. I looked at Mom, confused. I may have put in a good word, she admitted. It's time someone recognized your true worth. Before I could respond, Aaron appeared at my side. Everything okay? He asked, his hand finding the small of my back. I nodded, introducing him to Mom. As they chatted, I marveled at how natural it felt. This new dynamic, this new life. The party continued around us, but I found myself drawn to the balcony. As I stepped outside, the cool night air kissed my skin. The city stretched out before me, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. Aaron joined me, his presence a comforting warmth at my side. "Penny for your thoughts," he asked softly. I turned to him, really seeing him for the first time. I was just thinking about how far I've come, how different everything is now. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "You're an incredible woman, Lori. I hope you know that." In that moment, with the city lights twinkling and the sounds of laughter drifting from inside, I made a decision. I leaned in and kissed him, soft and sweet. When we parted, both a little breathless, I smiled. I'm starting to believe it. As we stood there, hand in hand, I realized that this wasn't just an ending to my old life. It was the beginning of something beautiful and new. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in my life, I was excited to see where it would lead. I had lost so much, a husband, a sister, the family I thought I knew. But in their place, I had gained something far more precious, myself. And with that newfound strength, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future stretched out before me, bright and full of promise, and I was ready to embrace it, one day at a time. I never thought my world would crumble in the dead of night, in our own garage. The scene before me was like a twisted nightmare. There, entangled in the backseat of our family car, were Ethan and Grace, my husband and sister. The pain of betrayal struck me like a physical blow, leaving me gasping for air. My name is Ava Carter, a 28-year-old nurse, married to the man I thought was the love of my life. Ethan was my high school classmate, someone I barely knew back then, but when he re-entered my life years later, he came as a whirlwind romance that I naively believed was fate. "Our love is real, Ava," Ethan's words echoed in my mind, now a cruel joke in the face of his betrayal. Our love story began innocently enough. Ethan approached me after graduation, his charm and attentiveness sweeping me off my feet. He was the popular guy in school, the kind that every girl dreamed of. But me? I was just Ava, the quiet one. His interest in me was baffling, yet intoxicating. Why me? I had asked him once, my insecurities surfacing. "Because I fell in love," he replied, his gaze holding mine, convincing and sincere. Or so I thought. The doubt I carried was partly due to my sister, Grace. Beautiful, outgoing, and the polar opposite of me. She was the one who always shone, effortlessly attracting attention. When I turned to her for advice about Ethan, her words were encouraging, yet somehow patronizing. "He's serious about you. Who would chase a girl for months for a fling?" she had said, her words tinted with a hint of condescension. I wanted to believe her, to believe that someone could truly love me for me. Ethan's kindness in our first year together only solidified my trust. He was the perfect boyfriend, showering me with attention and surprises. Every anniversary, every birthday was a celebration of our love. But after we got married, everything changed. "Can't you at least help with the cleaning? It's your house, too," I pleaded with Ethan on countless occasions. He earned less than me, spending most of his time idly while I worked exhausting shifts at the hospital. But he shrugged off my requests, his once sweet words turning into sharp retorts. "You're the one who's good at it," he'd say, his voice laced with annoyance. The emotional toll was immense. My once fairy tale romance had turned into a draining, one-sided relationship. Ethan's transformation from a loving partner to a freeloader was gradual but relentless. The worst part? I started believing that maybe it was my fault, that maybe I wasn't enough. That night, the night I caught them, was supposed to be like any other. I woke up to find Ethan's side of the bed cold and empty. A sense of unease led me to the garage, where I heard them before I saw them. The sight of Ethan and Grace together shattered any illusions I had left. "Be gentle, Ethan," Grace's voice was a whisper, but to me it was a scream that tore through my heart. I stood there, frozen, as the truth revealed itself in the most horrifying way. They didn't see me. They were too lost in their own world of deceit. I closed the garage quietly, locking them in their den of betrayal. Rushing to my parents' house, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief. My parents and Mark, Grace's unsuspecting husband, were waiting, their expressions grim. Mark held a recording device in his hand, and the voices of Ethan and Grace filled the room, discussing their affair with a casual cruelty that made my skin crawl. I knew then what I had to do. Revenge was the only path left for me. I wanted them to feel the pain they inflicted, to understand the depth of their betrayal, and I was ready to do whatever it took to make that happen. "Let's make them pay," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me, and so the plan for retribution began. As the sun peeked through the curtains the next morning, my resolve hardened. The man I had loved, Ethan, was nothing but a mask, and Grace, my sister, a serpent in disguise. I replayed their secret conversations, each word a dagger to my heart. "You're just too good at this, Ethan." Grace's voice from the recording mocked me. Ethan's laughter followed. "Only for you, Grace." The memories of our relationship, once sweet, now turned bitter. Ethan and I had started as friends, and his pursuit seemed so genuine. He was the popular one, the golden boy, while I remained in the background, unnoticed. His sudden interest in me was like a dream come true. I was flattered, overwhelmed, and eventually in love. "Why me?" I had asked him more than once. "Because you're different, Ava. You're real," Ethan had said, looking into my eyes with such intensity that I believed him. That belief was my downfall. But Grace, she was the epitome of confidence and allure. She had always been the center of attention, effortlessly stealing the spotlight. When Ethan came into my life, her advice was laced with subtle jabs, undermining my self-esteem while pretending to be supportive. "Take a chance, Ava. Ethan seems different," she urged, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I remembered how Ethan's behavior started changing after our marriage. The sweet gestures and thoughtful surprises became rarer, replaced by indifference and neglect. I was left to manage everything, from household chores to finances, while Ethan lounged around, his job at his father's company more of a time pass than a career. "We need to support each other, Ethan. Can't you see I'm struggling?" I had pleaded with him countless times. "You knew I wasn't the domestic type," was his cold reply. My efforts to involve him in our life were met with resistance and anger. His once loving words turned into harsh criticisms. His hands, once gentle, now raised in threat. I remembered the fear, the sense of walking on eggshells around my own husband. "You're better off doing it yourself. You don't want me to mess it up, do you?" Ethan's words were a constant reminder of my supposed inadequacy. The realization that it was all a charade to get close to Grace hit me like a tidal wave. Their affair wasn't just a fleeting moment of weakness. It was planned, nurtured in deceit. They used my love, my trust, as a stepping stone for their sordid affair. Grace's words from the recording played in my mind. "I've always admired how easily you manipulate, Ethan." His response was a chilling confession. "And I admire your ability to play the innocent sister." The plan for revenge took shape in my mind, clear and precise. I couldn't let them get away with their treachery. They needed to understand the pain they had caused, the lives they had shattered. It was time for their facade of love to come crashing down. "I will make them regret every lie, every deceit," I whispered to myself, a vow that I intended to keep. The morning light did nothing to ease the storm inside me. As I sat with Mark, my parents, and the recording, a plan began to take shape. It was more than just a need for revenge. It was a quest for justice, for exposing the lies that Ethan and Grace had woven so skillfully. "Did you know about this, Mark?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I had my suspicions," Mark confessed, his eyes dark with pain, "but I never imagined the depth of their betrayal." My parents, always supportive, looked at me with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "We're here for you, Ava, whatever you need," my father said, his voice firm. It was a surreal moment, hearing the supportive words of my family while grappling with the betrayal of those I had loved. Ethan's true nature was a bitter pill to swallow. He was no longer the man I married, but a stranger with a charming facade. Our anniversary, it was all a lie, wasn't it? The words tumbled out of me, a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "He never cared about the marriage, Ava. It was all a game to him." Mark's voice was heavy with unspoken emotions. The conversation shifted to the specifics of our revenge. It had to be meticulous, leaving no room for Ethan and Grace to escape the consequences of their actions. "We need to hit them where it hurts the most," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Financially and socially," Mark added, his mind already strategizing. The plan was simple yet effective. We would use the evidence of the affair to ruin their reputation. Ethan's job at his father's company would be the first target. With the recording and my testimony, it would be easy to convince his father of Ethan's true character. "Grace won't get away with this either," I said, a cold determination settling over me. Mark nodded. "I'll file for divorce and make sure she doesn't get a penny." The thought of confronting them was both terrifying and exhilarating. I wanted to see the shock on their faces when they realized their world was crumbling. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the pain they had caused me. "Let's do it. Let's bring them down," I declared, my voice filled with a newfound strength. My parents agreed, their support unwavering. "We'll stand by you, Ava, always," my mother said, her eyes glistening with tears. The meeting ended with a plan in place. It was time for Ethan and Grace to face the consequences of their actions. They thought they could use me and get away with it. They were wrong. I would make sure of that. The day unfolded with a tense anticipation. I waited for the moment when Ethan and Grace would realize their carefully constructed world of lies was about to collapse. My heart raced with a mix of fear and vindictive satisfaction. In the late afternoon, the confrontation took place. Ethan and Grace, looking disheveled and confused after being released from the garage, were summoned to my parents' house. They walked in, not knowing that their lives were about to change irrevocably. "What the hell, Ava? Why did you lock us in there?" Ethan's voice was filled with anger and confusion. Grace added, her voice dripping with feigned innocence, "Ava, we were worried sick about you. Why did you run off like that?" Their acting was almost convincing, but I knew better. "You're worried about me? That's rich, coming from you two," I replied, my voice cold and unwavering. Mark stepped forward, his presence commanding. "We know about the affair. All of it." Ethan and Grace exchanged a panicked look, their masks of concern quickly dissolving. "You have no proof," Ethan blurted out, his voice betraying his fear. "That's where you're wrong," Mark said, pulling out the recording device. The voices of Ethan and Grace filled the room, their intimate conversation echoing off the walls. The color drained from their faces as they listened to their own words, their affair laid bare for all to hear. This is illegal. You can't record us like that." Grace stammered, her composure shattered. I stepped closer, my anger boiling over. "You think that matters now, after everything you've done? You used me, Ethan. You used our marriage to get to my sister. And you, Grace, how could you do this to me? To Mark?" My voice was a mixture of rage and heartache. Ethan's defiance crumbled, replaced by a desperate plea. "Ava, please, I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." "And you, Grace? What's your excuse?" I demanded, my gaze fixed on her. Grace's eyes darted around the room, seeking an ally, finding none. "It was a mistake, Ava. I never meant to hurt you." "A mistake? You call an ongoing affair a mistake?" My words were sharp, cutting through the room. Mark intervened, his voice calm but firm. "The marriage is over, Grace. I've already filed for divorce. And as for you, Ethan, your father will know about this. I doubt he'll want a son-in-law who cheats on his daughter with her own sister." Ethan's face went pale, the reality of his situation finally dawning on him. Grace began to sob, her tears failing to elicit sympathy from anyone in the room. "You two deserve each other," I said, the finality in my voice marking the end of the chapter that had been Ethan and Grace in my life. As they left, their pleas and cries echoing behind them, I felt a sense of closure. The path ahead would be challenging, but at least it would be free from their deceit. The revenge was just beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The aftermath of the confrontation left a bitter taste in my mouth. Ethan and Grace had left, their facades of innocence shattered. But it wasn't enough. The depth of their betrayal demanded more than just a revelation. It required retribution. Sitting around the dining table with Mark and my parents, we plotted our next moves. The air was thick with a sense of righteous anger, a collective desire to see justice served. "We need to ensure they truly understand the consequences of their actions," Mark said, his voice resolute. I nodded in agreement. "They can't just walk away from this unscathed." "My father?" usually a man of few words, spoke up. Ethan's employment at his father's company is his lifeline. If he loses that, he loses everything. A plan began to form, one that involved not just exposing Ethan's infidelity to his family, but also highlighting his manipulative nature. His father, a respected businessman, would not tolerate such a scandal. "And what about Grace?" my mother asked, her voice tinged with disappointment and disgust for her own daughter. "Her social standing, her lifestyle, it all hinges on her marriage to Mark," I said. "Once the divorce is finalized and the details of her infidelity become public, she'll lose it all." Mark nodded. "I'll make sure the divorce settlement leaves her with nothing. She won't be able to charm her way out of this." The conversation turned to the logistics of our plan. Mark had contacts who could expedite the divorce and ensure the affair was made public. My father knew people in the business community who would ensure Ethan's disgrace was well known. It was a meticulous plan, cold and calculated, but it was justified. Ethan and Grace had played with our lives, and now they would face the repercussions. "Are you sure about this, Ava?" my mother asked, concern in her eyes. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "They need to learn that actions have consequences. They can't just use people and expect to get away with it." As we finalized our plan, I felt a sense of empowerment. For too long, I had been the victim of their deceit, but now I was taking control. Ethan and Grace would soon learn the true cost of their betrayal, and I would be there to witness their fall. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as our plan was set into motion. Mark, with his connections, expedited the divorce proceedings and ensured that the details of Grace's infidelity became public knowledge. The reaction was immediate and scathing. Grace, once a social butterfly, found herself ostracized, her friends turning their backs on her in disgust. Meanwhile, my father used his influence to spread the word about Ethan's behavior. Soon enough, the scandal reached his father's ears. The disappointment and anger in his father's voice were palpable when he called Ethan for a meeting. "I cannot believe you would stoop so low, Ethan," his father had said, according to what I heard later. "You have not only shamed yourself, but our entire family." Ethan's pleas fell on deaf ears. His father, a man of principles, could not overlook such a grave transgression. Ethan was promptly removed from his position in the company, his future in tatters. As for Grace, the reality of her situation hit her hard. The luxurious life she had enjoyed was slipping through her fingers like sand. Her husband, whom she had deceived, was now her ex-husband, and he made sure she left the marriage with nothing but her personal belongings. The day of reckoning came when I encountered Ethan and Grace together, looking defeated and desperate. They had come, hoping for some form of forgiveness, a chance to explain themselves. "Ava, please, you have to understand," Ethan began, his voice trembling. "You don't get to ask for understanding, Ethan. Not after everything you've done." I cut him off, my voice cold and unyielding. Grace was next, her eyes brimming with tears. "Ava, I'm your sister. Please, can't we just talk about this?" "You ceased to be my sister the moment you betrayed me," I said, the finality in my voice leaving no room for argument. They tried to plead, to reason, but it was useless. The damage was done, their actions irredeemable. They had played a dangerous game and lost everything. "You both made your choices, and now you have to live with them," I said, turning away from their pleas. As I walked away, leaving them behind, I felt a sense of closure. The weight of their betrayal would no longer hold me down. They had received their due punishment, and I could finally move on. Ethan and Grace had thought they could manipulate those around them without consequence. But they were wrong. They learned the hard way that deceit and treachery come at a price they would now pay for the rest of their lives. In the weeks that followed, the dust began to settle. Ethan and Grace, now pariahs, faced the harsh reality of their choices. Their fall from grace was a tale whispered in hushed tones among our acquaintances, serving as a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal and deceit. Meanwhile, I found myself in a period of reflection. The intense emotions that had fueled my desire for revenge gave way to a quiet introspection. I had sought justice, and in many ways I had achieved it. Yet the victory was bittersweet. There was no joy in seeing the downfall of people I once loved, only a profound sense of loss and a desire to move forward. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the routine and the sense of purpose it brought. My colleagues noticed the change in me, a newfound strength and resilience that had emerged from the ashes of my old life. One day, after a particularly grueling shift, I sat down with a close friend and coworker, Lisa, who had been a pillar of support through everything. "You look different, Ava. Stronger," she commented, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and admiration. "I had to be," I replied, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "I couldn't let them destroy me." Lisa nodded, understanding. "And now, what's next for Ava Carter?" I smiled, a genuine smile that had been absent for too long. "I start living for myself. I rebuild, but this time on my own terms." The path to healing wasn't straightforward. There were days when anger and sadness threatened to overwhelm me, but with each passing day they became less potent. I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had lost in my marriage, my independence, my strength, and my capacity for joy. Months passed, and life found a new rhythm. Ethan and Grace became distant memories, occasional whispers in the wind that no longer had the power to hurt me. My relationship with my parents and Mark grew stronger, forged in the fires of adversity. We had faced a storm together, and it had brought us closer. As for love, I was cautious. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they were healing. I knew that someday I would be ready to open my heart again, but for now, I was content in finding peace within myself. Sitting in the park one sunny afternoon, watching the world go by, I realized that I had come a long way. The journey had been painful, filled with trials and tribulations, but it had led me to a place of understanding and acceptance. I had learned that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, was not a path to true happiness. True strength lay in forgiveness, in the ability to let go of the past and embrace the future. As I looked up at the clear blue sky, I felt a sense of hope, a belief that the best was yet to come. The past could not be changed, but the future was mine to write. And with that thought, I stood up, ready to face whatever life had in store for me, with a heart that was healing and a spirit that was unbroken.